Okay. Actually, ma'am, the next question is with the posterior field only. It's asked that what's the rationale of posterior axillary boost and why is it used now? Why is it not used now? And what is the alternative of it which is used?
Yeah, very good question. It is not used now because in the cobalt era we didn't have an option of a higher energy. But with linear accelerator, if we know that separation is higher and we are not getting adequate coverage at 3 centimeter, at least the 90% of the CTV should be covered in the 90% ISO dose. If it is not so, then we can go ahead and use a higher energy, that is 10 MV, but that option was not available with the cobalt, so we were using an extra field which was the posterior axillary field.
Okay. Ma'am, I have a question in the diagrams as we had already seen. Ma'am, you had used breastboard. So,
Yeah,
ma'am, are you still using it, and what are the angles for the breastboard? Is it fixed or is it individualized?
it is individualized, Dr. Ruchi. It is as per
Okay,
patient's comfort. So a
okay,
breast
ma'am.
board is, first of all, it is indexed to the CT simulation couch. It should be indexed with the couch. That is
Okay, ma'am.
the position of the breastboard in relation to
Mm-hmm.
the CT simulator couch should be fixed by an indexer. That is very important. After that, the patient needs to lie comfortably if on
Mm-hmm.
breastboard. So it has to be individualized as per patient's comfort. It has to
Ma'am,
be the
are you
position
using it
according.
with 2D planning only, or it's with 3D also?
Actually, we are not doing 2D planning anymore.
Okay.
Uh, we are doing 3D CRT, and we are using breastboard as well as wingboard both.
Okay, because ma'am, with 2D planning, I think there is definite advantage of breastboard with in comparison to
Definitely.
the flat chest. Yeah.
Definitely. If we are
Yes.
able to look at the dose volume histograms, then we can work on it. But if we do not have access to CT cuts, if we are using conventional simulators, then
Mhm.
proper positioning of the patient and proper positioning of the beams is our best chance. So I think so.
Yes, ma'am.
More.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Now coming to the question, the next question. So it said that who is happy to treat IMN and actively practice it after NCCN 2020, said it category 1.
Pardon? I didn't get the question.
Actually, ma'am, I am also not getting exactly what they are trying to ask. Maybe they are asking that what's the role of IMN radiation after NCCN 2020.
Okay. So NCCN 2020 only says that there is level 1 evidence. It only says plus minus, doesn't say that it has to be done in all cases. But this MA20 and the EORTC 22922 trial, they were using internal memory irradiation, and they have shown a benefit. But as I have shown that in their control arm, it was only the chest wall or the breast RT. So we are not
Right,
able to
ma'am.
decipher whether it is due to the internal memory or the medial supraclavicular field that we are
Mm-hmm.
getting the improvement in the results. So it
Oh,
still leaves us with a doubt.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, next question is anyone, has anyone done their audits or for IMN recurrences?
Pardon? I
Ma'am, is there any audit for IMN recurrences that has been done?
Okay. The audit for recurrences, yeah, I think so. The studies that I looked up are a Korean study, a study by Chang et al. And Born et al. These are like mapping studies, and then there has been the study, review that I showed. They have taken into, but these are all pattern of failure studies, and they are all retrospective. So if a
Okay.
prospective study has ever been done, I am not aware of regarding
Okay.
I I am in failures in
Okay,
the
ma'am.
eye.
Yeah, I think ma'am, definitely to take IMN in radiation field is challenging because it's always going to increase the heart and lung doses. So now coming to the next question, ma'am. The next question is if in a case scenario it's T2N0 with LVI and luminal A, then what's the role of RT?
T2N0 with LVI positive.
Yes, ma'am, and luminal A.
Okay. So, as I said that looking into the molecular features, the results of the Taylor RT study are still awaited, but T2N0 LVI positive, as per the St. Gallons, they said that RT should be given because they considered that a if it's a high risk, then there was a consensus for RT to the chest wall.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, next question is when we are talking about RNI,
Hmm.
then in RNI, which levels we should include? Like it's axillary plus SCF plus IMN or what?
Yeah, that is what I have been discussing. That when we are talking about regional nodal irradiation, uh, it always means. So let us again discuss about when we are giving tangentials. Level 1 axillary and part of level 2 axillary are covered in the tangential fields. This medial supraclavicular field takes care of the level 3 axillary. But if there is extracapsular extension, then we need to treat the entire axilla, for which we need to modify the supraclavicular field and include some part of the head of humerus as well. Regarding IMN, it needs to be individualized, looking at the site of the primary and other features, but the evidence is more and more in favor of IMN. So I don't know how long we can, we really have to wait uh, to not treat IMN actually, because most of the studies, or some were underpowered, like the French trial, the design was faulty, and the other they have and the Danish also they included the IMN along with the other supraclavicular field. So we do not know that which nodal level is giving us the benefit, but otherwise, what our standard textbooks have told us, the Perez, this it said that if it's a central or medial uh, T3, T4 primary, and if there is a sentinel lymph node positive, which is showing drainage into IMN, then those are situations where we must go ahead and treat IMN.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, next question is from my side, ma'am. Ma'am, in which cases do you involve the chest wall in your target field? Like it's usually kept above the ribs, but in which cases it's down the rib?
Uh, Down the rib, actually, I think so. Now, if it's so you are basically talking about T4.
Costopleural junction, ma'am, to be
So
exact.
you're
Yes,
talking
ma'am.
about T4A disease where the chest wall is actually involved, no? So uh, in these scenarios, we now give neoadjuvant chemotherapy, because otherwise such cases which are fixed to the chest wall will be inoperable. So first of all, we have to make this disease operable by downsizing and giving neoadjuvant chemotherapy. And when we are able to have a negative margin on surgery, then perhaps those are the cases where we should be more liberal about the posterior part of the chest wall. Otherwise, of the two guidelines that I've discussed, the ESTRO says that we have to stop short above the pec major muscle, and the RTOG guidelines say that we have to go up to the rib pleura interface. So going further down, I don't know. At least there are no guidelines for
Yes,
that.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Now giving over to Dr. Tripti, ma'am. Ma'am will ask further questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ruchi. I think we are done with the questions. A lot of questions were based on the like nodal irradiation only, and definitely we don't have definite answers for that. I think we need to individualize our fields based on case-to-case basis, as Dr. Ragoni beautifully discussed in the end of the discussion, case 1, 2, 3. I think every case is to be individualized, and nodal, especially the nodal areas are to be individualized, which is to be treated and which is to be left, considering the other radiobiological features, other the tumor biology and everything. So there is one question left behind, like what are your dosage schedules in case of early breast cancer, where we are going to treat the breast alone? Breast early or locally advanced in a conservation surgery, where we are treating the breast with the nodal basins. And the third case is chest wall radiation with the nodal irradiation. Like how you decide your doses. Do you include, like, do you take hypofractionation only in the breveluted breast, and or you are following in all the cases, like how you decide your doses?
So, Dr. Tripti, we are doing hypofractionation even in chest wall irradiation when we are doing regional nodal irradiation. Although the trials are more for those where BCS has been done, but there are cases where hypofractionation has been done post mastectomy, and in our practice, we have done. A retrospective audit also. There was no increase in toxicity of skin or and we did a follow-up for 3 years of these patients, and now we are treating these patients where we are giving dose to where we are giving RT to the chest wall as well as the supraclav. We are doing 40 grain 15 fractions for these patients.
Okay.
Over
So
3 days.
let me flip flop this question. Who are the cases in whom you will take the patients for conventional fractionation? Are there any subgroup of patient in which you will decide, no, I'll give conventional fractionation? Are there any subgroups?
I think so. When I'm going ahead with internal memory registration also, I will do hypofraction with a pinch of salt. Then those cases I would like to go by conventional
Okay.
fractionation.
And what's your take on inflammatory breast cancers? You will take them for
Inflammatory breast cancers I did not discuss here, but the doses are higher, up to 60 grain.
yeah. Yeah. And there are no clear-cut guidelines for the phyllodes also.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah, very good, very good.
no,
But I thought we are talking about infiltrating ductal, so I did not mention that.
during COVID times, I have treated one patient with a hypofractionated, but after well explaining to the patient, like this is not the ideal way. So there is a question persistently moving, like they want to see your level 3 lymph node slides. I think there might be some discussion on where you have showed the estro and the RTOG comparison of the level 3 lymph nodes.
Level 3.
Yeah.
So level 3 as per RTOG, it is it follows the axillary vessels where they cross the medial edge of pec minor, and while the estro it takes into account the subclavian artery, 5 mm cranial to the subclavian vein. So this is the diagram.
Fine. And further, there are questions regarding bolus, how you use it. You use it 2 centimeter around the scar, or you use it on the over the chest wall, like whole of the chest wall. You use it daily, alternate day, or how you use it.
The bolus that I have
mentioned for that.
No, the bolus that I have mentioned is as per the ESTRO guidelines. If we intend to do delineation, we need to keep a bolus 2 centimeters above and below the scar at the time of simulation itself, because they say that the chest wall becomes very thin in some patients. It's almost it's very thin. So in those cases, they have advised that we should have a bolus. So this is as per the ESTRO guidelines. But otherwise, in our case, we are using bolus only if the skin was positive, and we are doing it on alternate day. But not during simulation. We have not done any study in which we have done the volumes as per the ESTRO guidelines. So we have not really done simulations with a bolus in place around the scars. We do not really use these guidelines.
Tripti, Punita ma'am is here. Ma'am, please can you give your final comments on this particular,
Bolus.
not bolus, overall
Okay, sure.
post mastectomy radiation.
Sure.
Right. So I think Rohini's presentation was fantastic. It was, she's covered practically all aspects that needed to be covered. I can just give a few points which I thought, just to add on to what Rohini has said, because there's nothing that she has left untouched and covered beautifully. If we just start off with the, everybody was very clear that in high risk situations, that is when more than 4 nodes are present, there is no doubt, and we have to, EBCTCD 2005 has shown us that you have to treat because there is survival benefit. And so have your Danish trials and British Columbia trials. So that question was well answered. And then by the literature, then Rohini's touched upon about what happens to 1 to 3. And very clearly she's mentioned that now with the current we are quite clear that most of the 1 to 3s need to be treated. Like she did say that you segregate. If there are poor risk factors, then be in no doubt, please treat even if there is 1 node present. Only thing is then you may need to tease out the 1 node present with low risk features like luminal A. And that's what St. Gallen says. In fact, St. Gallen's 2019 did mention that in the consensus in 60% was that you treat. Agar ek bhi node present hai, treat it. But 1/3 said that you treat. But 2/3 felt that you look into the risk factors. Even if there is 1 risk factor present alongside other lymphovascular invasion, any other factor that is sitting close to the tumor sitting close to the margin or something, then you treat. So in 1 to 3, the consensus is moving towards treating than not treating. Then somebody, you took up the question about axillary radiotherapy. Yes, axillary radiotherapy, like what has been mentioned by Dr. Rohini, you need to treat whenever, see there are, if it is undissected axilla or improperly dissected, it's incompletely dissected, then of course, based on the Amaros evidence, you should treat the axilla. The choice is that you go ahead with axillary dissection or you go ahead with radiotherapy. The other than that, like Rohini mentioned about the retrospective evidence that that is teaching us, Ontario-based practice has been that if it is either not dissected or incompletely dissected, or else when there is what should I say, the heavy nodal burden. The nodal burden is too extensive, then you should treat the axilla. In Indian scenario, I would say, I think corporate hospitals tier A cities where the surgeons are, there are dedicated onco-surgeons or breast surgeons who are treating the axilla and going up to at least good level 2. You may take a call in cases of heavy nodal burden. But if you're not, if it is coming from a community practice and you know that level 3 and maybe even part of level 2 has been untouched, that is when you should individualize and move towards giving axillary radiotherapy than not giving. Remember that there is a lot of morbidity that is associated, and it has been shown, proven, there is level 1 evidence that if you've given 1 treatment, that is surgery, you get morbidity. If you've given radiotherapy, you get lesser morbidity. If you've given both, the morbidity increases in terms of lymphedema to a very large extent. So you have to be very careful. Treat only when you are completely not sure of whether the axilla, the surgeon has left the axillary contents or not. Because the logic is that there was disease in this room. The surgeon has cleared completely, no need to treat. You are not sure at all, then you think of treating. Then somebody asked about posterior axillary boost, and Rohini has talked about that if the beam energy that we have now wasn't there earlier, and that is what it is. Because I happen to come from an older school of thought, I'll probably add what we used to do earlier, which you guys may not have seen. So the posterior axillary boost in when we were students was a common practice, especially in women where the separation was more than 12 to 14 centimeters. Why would we give? One point is what Rohini has mentioned, that it was only cobalt era, and also because we were giving axilla a lot. Unlike now, after the rage controversy and all that, we are not giving axilla unless we require it. So what Fletcher taught us was that you look at the mid-axillary plane. And if the dose that is being received is to the tune of 85%, then or less, then you cover from the rest of the 15-20% from posterior axilla, and the portals have been given. Rohini's described the portals. So that is regarding the posterior axillary boost in case you're giving axillary radiotherapy and in case the mid-axillary plane dose is less. I think those are the things regarding IMNRT. I don't think I need to add further, because although the evidence, there is modest evidence regarding use of IMNRT, but most of us continue not to use because of the cardiac issues, the technical problems in placing portals, and the cardiac issues, and also the lung. The lot of, if you're giving wide tangents, part of lung would come, and so you would be giving, there is a chance of second malignancy and all also. Rohini, you talked about the Danish trial as well, which after which they have actually made it into their practices that all right-sided tumors where there is central medial quadrant tumor and node is positive, axillary nodes are positive, that's where they would give. Left side, its touching is still a big issue. Somebody did talk about T3N0s, which Rohini mentioned that Supremo trial will give answers. Yeah, and regarding the patterns of failure, if you give an IMNRT or not IMNRT, these are all retrospective. We have analyzed. Naved was, I saw Naved in this group, and he has analyzed and found that with no IMNRT and some IMNRTs that we had given retrospectively, we did not find much difference in terms of patterns of failure. He's presented this data somewhere, I think Faro or something. Tripti, you asked about conventional. Where would you give conventional? Firstly, we are fairly clear that 3 weeks is the standard of care. There is no difference. There's trials and these reviews of the 3 trials have shown, and so much of retrospective data coming in and prospective data coming in, which has shown that hypofractionated schedule of 3 weeks is as good as 5 weeks, except like you mentioned about phyllodes. I just thought that all the points were very correctly mentioned, except that maybe the sarcomas, like you said about phyllodes, and very large breasts sometimes pose problems, and you may have to resort to conventional. I think bolus and all, Rohini has mentioned that in and around the 3 centimeters of the scar is the chances where maximum failures can occur. So you have to be careful, especially because it is thin. Rajiv Sarin's paper has shown that cutoff of 3, but mostly that's what we would follow. I think that by and large is what I had to say. Thank you, and a wonderful presentation, Rohini. Enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. बहुत ही अच्छा आपने. You have summed up everything.
Anu ma'am, I was thinking that from next time onwards, like we can have a senior faculty to sum up everything, like that gives a beautiful insight, and everything is like clear.
Yeah.
And
See, I
Physics
think
class,
the
na?
person who has read it and presented actually is the person. The senior faculty usually is more redundant, and so they should one odd point here and there makes sense, but the
not at all,
presenter
ma'am.
is really
Like experience and your taught teachings are like we can never forget.
little
They're
bit,
excellent.
yes.
There's
Little.
no need to, there are no words to describe.
Yeah, really,
The reiteration really helps actually. Yes, ma'am.
Hmm.
It does.
definitely. So I
I
think
think this is the end of the session today. Now, Rashi, can you just give the final remarks and end it?
yeah, I think
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank all senior faculties, Dr. Rohini, Dr. Anu Tiwari, Dr. Trapti Sakran, and Dr. Ruchi. And most important, our all delegates, all participants who participated in it. And our next class will be a physics lecture by Dr. Maurya. As we all know, he is excellent in physics. So we will meet next time, and you can see your recordings. And actually, we are not asking for these PPTs. If Dr. Rohini want, she can share, but actually we are not asking any senior person to share their PPTs. Thank you all. Thank you so much. So I'm ending this webinar. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tripti and Dr. Anu.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.